you have a practice or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Valuations Podcast, brought to you by Truelytics, the premier business intelligence platform for the wealth management industry. My name is Mike Langford, and I'm the host of the Valuations Podcast. And this week, I'm joined by an old friend, Victor Gaxiola. Now, Victor is currently the head of marketing and a co-founder of Tech Girl Financial. But when he and I met, we're kind of in the same space. Way back in 2011, I was a head of strategy for a company called Socialware, which was the first firm in the industry to make it possible for financial advisors and wealth management firms to use social media and do so compliantly. So we're kind of on the cutting edge there, very early days of things. And many advisors and broker-dealers and wirehouses weren't quite sure that social media was something they wanted to do or could do. And we made it possible for them to do that. Now, Victor was an early part of our community when I was there with Socialware. And he went on to join Actiance, which is another player, a competitor in this space. And then later, Hearsay Social. And he had a somewhat similar role to mine. One of the big things in my role was I was out there evangelizing the concept. It wasn't like just selling, hey, come use our software. It was like, hey, you need to be using social media. It was a new deal at the time. So I had to evangelize that concept to the industry. And Victor ended up doing some similar stuff at Actiance and Hearsay. Well, he's now off the vendor side of the business, and he is back with his partner, who happens to be his wife, running a firm called Tech Girl Financial. And as the name suggests, they have a very strong niche of working with professionals in the tech sector and helping them manage their wealth and plan for the future. And of course, they have a very strong leaning towards women professionals in the industry, and that they serve them very well. So really, really interesting talk that Victor and I have here. We kind of reminisce or if you will, or riff on some of the things we've learned over the years about digital marketing, social media, digital content like podcasts and video for the space. So a lot of really good stuff there. One of the things you'll hear towards the end, which I think really encapsulates this episode, and you got to get to the end to hear this, but Victor really points to why all this stuff makes your business more valuable, right? Because that's what we're doing here in the Valuations Podcast, is helping you increase the value of your wealth management business. And how does social media and podcasts and online videos and just being active online, how does that increase the value of your business? Well, a little hint, growing an audience is valuable. And the size of your audience and the quality of the audience that you own access to for your business really does contribute to the value of your business long term and what somebody may be willing to pay for it someday should you want to sell your practice or transition your business to another ownership. So you're going to want to strap in and tune in for this one. So grab a beverage. Make sure you click the like button, subscribe button, tell a friend about this podcast, because that's how we're spreading the word. And of course, as always, send us your questions, valuations@truelytics.com. We love to hear what you want to see or hear on the show. All right, are you ready? Here's Victor. All right, well, welcome to the show, Victor. It's wonderful to have you. It feels like forever since we've been able to hang out. I mean, I know it's been a couple of days since we had kind of a pre-chat, but like you and I used to like see each other in our streams and be chatting quite frequently back in the early days.
Yes.
Frankly, I think it's really interesting because, you and I have known each other since the, very early days of social. So it's really kind of fun to see that, we're still connected and kind of still in the same space. And you have recently kind of changed teams, right? You've gone back into the business. So I thought it might be kind of cool for the audience to get a little bit of your IMDb journey, how did you end up at Tech Girl Financial, working with your lovely wife, Kim? What was that like? Because over these last, how long have I known you now? Since 2011, right? So since 2011, like you've had quite the journey, and I'm sure it was a big journey before that. But you kind of love to, hear the story about how you got here and what you're finding exciting these days.
Well, thanks, Mike. And you're right. It's just been great to be able to maintain this relationship with you throughout the years. And it's one of these, it's a real testament for the power of digital and social specifically because, as you had mentioned, we've known each other for so many years, but the relationship actually started online. And it wasn't until we actually met physically, I think it was in 2013 at South by Southwest, and then we've been able to carry this relationship forward. So thanks for the invitation to be on the program. But yeah, my journey. I work for Tech Girl Financial. Tech Girl Financial, it was founded by both my wife and I, Kim Gaxiola, who is a CFP. She's a financial professional. And she basically recruited me many years ago to be part of the practice. Because like many advisors, getting into this business was not something I did right out of college, but it was after spending near 10 years working at United Airlines in Chicago. And I had worked on a number of marketing and sales roles. And, and it was through that experience that I learned how to collaborate with others, have conversations, know what it meant to work in a team. And it was during a point of career transition that I was looking for something to do, that would challenge me. And it was actually Kim who came to me and said, hey, look, I'm going to get back into the financial services industry, and I think that you'd be a natural for it. So why don't you, join me? And what I quickly discovered, which I think is the case for a lot of people who might be coming at this as a second career, that learning how to be a good financial advisor, learning how to be able to sit across the table from individuals and talk to them was less about knowing about finances and really more about how do you relate to people and others, and how do you communicate and how do you make these connections. So what we quickly discovered is by working together as a team that I was the go-to person that naturally gravitated to working with prospects by sitting across from them at the kitchen table and having those conversations. So I was always the first one to meet and talk to the prospects, talk to them about what the primary pain points are, and really having those conversations. And so it worked out really well for Kim and I that I would take that first appointment.
That's fantastic. It is really interesting. We talk about it a lot in this business, and you and I have had similar roles at respective companies, before, in terms of evangelizing, that the power of digital and more specifically social media for financial professionals. And that's one of the things I always found myself talking about is, look, this is a relationship-based business. Everybody talks about that. And here we have some of these, the greatest relationship management tools in the history of mankind, right? You no longer have to be in the same place or on the telephone to maintain a relationship with somebody. You actually can be in their life and in their stream at all times, connected with them. Mm-hmm. But to your point, very few things replace that face-to-face, that sitting across the table from people. But, you really do have to be able to identify with somebody. You have to be able to relate to them. You have to be able to kind of see the world through their eyes, if you will. Make them feel like you've walked a mile in their shoes, and so they can be comfortable with you. So it's really cool that you bring that perspective to the business.
Right. And it was going back to being in that first appointment. One of the things that I remember picking up on, and I think I've just discovered that I've been a student and a constant learner on like behavioral finance and at least people's behaviors and what drives them to make decisions. But when I would sit at that appointment, and typically I loved the kitchen table. That was like my space, to sit. And I would pay attention to not only what the things the prospect was saying, but I was focused on the paralanguage. What were they not saying? And then I'd look around in the environment. So if we were sitting in the kitchen, what pictures do they have on the fridge? Or if we're sitting in the living room, what pictures do they have in the mantelpiece? And I would get a sense of like what matters to them. What do they value? Whether it's artwork on the wall or just the conversations, and who was involved in the conversation. Was just the husband, or was the wife there, the spouse, the significant other? And then I'd take all this intelligence and take it back to Kim, and she'd create an investment proposal. But more importantly, I would say, okay, when you talk to them, this is the approach that's likely to make a connection for you. So the transition to social media was really interesting because it should be an easy transition, especially for advisors that are considering getting into social media or those who use it, because the exact same observations that I was making in the kitchen table or in the family room are, freely being given by customers or by prospects by what they're posting on social media and the things that they share, because they're expressing, the things that they value, but now in a digital space where I don't physically need to be sitting across from them now to be able to capture that amount of intelligence and information.
That's a really important point, and it's kind of like a little bit of connective tissue to Truelytics. Truelytics is a business intelligence tool or business intelligence suite, if you want to think of it as, for the wealth management industry, right? You can see what's working and what's not working in your business. And I have long said to people that social media is an amazing business intelligence tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because exactly what you just described, that, before you meet with a client, as an example, or a prospect, you can go on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, take your pick, look that person up a little bit, and you can see what's important to them before you sit down across the table from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start having a conversation, you can mention, when you vacation at the beach, as an example, with your family, because they vacation at the beach with their family. Or,
right.
Hey, you may have a kid that is looking to go to school and play basketball at the collegiate level, right? So you can have those types of conversations with somebody and just kind of know what's important to them right up front.
Right.
Versus it being this really painful discovery process. Like you said, you might get lucky and look around and see some pictures on the wall or what have you. But sometimes pulling stuff out of people and asking them what's important to them, what are their goals, is a little more difficult. And then on the existing client side, right, you have the ability to see what's happening in your client's life on a regular basis. Right. So what's going on. So you can reach out when they're mentioning like, oh, crap, so-and-so broke their leg, or so-and-so is looking for a new job again. Because, by the way, the first thing that a client does when they lose their job, it's not pick up the phone and call their financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what somebody does, right? If they lose their job, that's the first thing they start thinking about is, crap, I need another job, right?
Right.
But if all of a sudden they're like, hey, you notice that they're changing jobs, maybe you can reach out. So, sorry, I'm kind of stealing some of your thunder here.
What was never lost on me, and I remember going through the training program, especially as because I took this business very seriously and I wanted to do it right, was the industry kept telling us that we needed to know our client, like know your client. And I know that meant suitability, but I thought it meant at a much deeper level is, who are these people? Like, what drives them to make the decisions that they're making? And how can I be a really good coach and guide in making better financial decisions with them? And so that know your client, I said, what better way of being able to get a sense of who they really are based on the things that they're posting and the things that matter to them? And, for those advisors that are still kind of gun shy about it, I'm just telling you, you're missing a great opportunity, because even something like LinkedIn, so you don't have to be connected to them on Facebook, or you don't have to be connected to them on Twitter, but most people have a LinkedIn profile. And what I would do is, before meeting with them, go through, take a look at their profile. Where have they worked before? Where did they go to school? And what I was always looking for is to, as you had pointed out, like 1 or 2 points of connection. Like, how can I connect with this person? And it might have been that, hey, they went to a Pac-12 school. I went to a Pac-12 school. Or, hey, they actually speak Spanish. I speak Spanish. And so you're looking for these common points of connection, because this is a relationship-based business, and people are going to do business with people they like. And we've all heard that before. But here's all this intelligence and information that you're gathering for free that is going to help you, kind of grease the wheels of that relationship, so it's kicks off in a really good place.
I 100% or 1,000% agree. Whatever the maximum percentage I'm allowed to agree with you.
Okay.
No, it's really true, and it's I always say, people do business with those they know, like, and trust. Right. We've all heard that before. But there's something else in there, right? You need to be familiar with the person. The familiarity matters. So I can know you, like you, trust you, but if I haven't seen you or heard from you in years, I kind of forget you exist, or the relationship may go a little stale. But if I see you in my stream, whether that's on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, whatever, I see you there frequently, I become more familiar with you. And the other thing that kind of leads into is the other thing I usually say is know you, like you, trust you, be familiar with you, but also have some degree of confidence in your capability, right? That you are competent in what you do. And that kind of leads me into the next topic of online content production, because you and I kind of connected. I was like, hey, listen, I saw that you guys are doing a podcast for Tech Girl Financial. I know you used to do one for your former employer. And actually, kind of how you and I really connected, right? So when I was the head of strategy for Socialware, I created a show called Social Business TV. This is back in 2011.
I remember.
and it was a weekly streaming show, and you were one of our earliest, community members. Like I could almost always count on you being there for the live stream and sending in questions and commenting and retweeting and sharing that we're going to be going live. And I always appreciated that. And so for me, like online content creation, right? That creating a connection through content has always just seemed intuitive, right? But I thought maybe I could get your take because you've had a couple of tours in the space. You were at Actiance, you were at Hearsay, two really big influential players in the social media and digital marketing for financial advisors in the wealth management space. I thought maybe you could, kind of offer up your thoughts on why it's so important for advisors and, by extension, frankly, broker dealers to start taking content production seriously.
Yes, it's come full circle for me, right? So I think that when we first, got to know each other, it was that you were one of the early pioneers in actually evangelizing the need for digital technology, social technology in the financial services space. And so I really latched onto that. And the reason why I was such a big fan is because I found that, I'm not alone in thinking that this is the approach that we should take. And it was in and around that time that the whole industry was going through this, evolution. And I say evolution because it's not so much a revolution. Evolution takes time. And I think we were all very mindful. This is not an industry that's going to embrace social media as quickly as other industries might. And so it's going to take some time, but it's going to take voices like yours, like mine, to really push the envelope and almost stretch the industry into this adoption of these tools. And so I attempted to do that while still as an advisor. And, I would go back to my compliance department is, can I blog? And the answer was no. Can I use social media? You can have a profile. Can I create content? Yes, but it would take a long time for it to get approved through compliance. And so I constantly was meeting these roadblocks. And I thought to myself, I really want to see this industry move forward. It might be better if I leave the industry as an advisor, as someone who was licensed, and actually work for some of these companies like you that were actually supporting the advisor communities, kind of moving it and, either way, whether it was kicking or screaming, just bring it into the 21st century by adopting social media, by adopting text messaging, website development, and digital marketing. And then I got that perspective from the other side now, working for a couple of vendors that were supporting this industry. And the industry was slowly evolving, as you got more and more clients that are using it, more and more advisors finding value. I had done that for so many years that when I came back to the business earlier this year, I was just impressed by the availability of all these tools that didn't exist before that allowed us to make these connections with our clients. And you go back to the question as to why you would want to do it, because that's where the conversations are taking place. That's where people are sharing. That's where people are having, or asking the types of questions, or at least posting the kind of content. And there's an appetite for the information. And so if you're not positioning yourself either in your marketplace or your niche to basically share this information and become, and I'm using air quotes here, like the thought leader in this space, to really be able to present, hey, I've got something to say, and I'm not asking for anything other than you give me your attention. When the opportunity presents itself where you do have a need, I want to be top of mind. And I think that it's having that voice and being consistent, having a cadence of content and not letting up and never really sitting there making it with a hard sell. But let me just constantly be adding value, constantly be offering information. And the beautiful thing about how the industry has changed is, whereas before that might have just been sharing a third-party link on a social network, now it's creating videos. Now it's doing a podcast. Now it's, creating your own images. And so there's so much more that we can do. And there's so many more mediums available at our fingertips now that it becomes more of which ones do I want to do, which ones are going to connect with my audiences, and then establishing some sort of editorial calendar so that you can do this on a regular cadence.
It's really interesting. You mentioned voice a few times and the consistency in that cadence. And that really hits home for me when I think about this space, because many times what I have heard from financial professionals, so advisors and agents and wholesalers, and sometimes even the executive teams at wealth management firms, they'll say, well, we tried social and not much happened. And what they really mean is they threw a couple of posts out there and it didn't immediately translate to sales. So they're looking at these mediums as immediate sales conversion, right? That's what they want, right? So because they're used to, I mean, you got to think about it. Like most of the folks who have been in the industry for a while and are the top producers, they're closing in on 60 years old. They got their start when they were called stockbrokers. And all the movies you've ever seen, Wolf of Wall Street, Wall Street itself, all those type, Boiler Room, it kind of looked like that back in the old days. Sit at this desk and start dialing. You're going to get customers, right? And so they come from a sales environment. However, the reality with today is, look, that doesn't work. You can't cold call. It's not really going to work for you. Then many of those people transition to the lunch and learns, like, hey, come listen to me talk about finances for this free lunch. And some people come in, and of course, you're going to get 1 or 2 clients out of that. But even that's changing. But the reality is, people spend a ridiculous amount of time staring at their phones.
Oh, yeah.
They spend a lot of time with their face in the screen, and they are looking at Facebook. They are looking at Instagram. They are looking at LinkedIn, Twitter. They are spending a lot of time now with earbuds in their ears, listening to podcasts. Podcasts is the fastest growing medium out there. So they're spending time listening and watching and reading online. And if you were there with them, if you are an option for them to listen to, they will get comfortable with you. They will develop that familiarity. As you mentioned, that you will be top of mind with those people, and they'll get comfortable with you to a point where when that time comes for them to do business with you, you're the top of the consideration set, right? Because the reality is not everybody is in the market for your services right now.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have a 401k that's ready for rollover, right? They might be at their employer and most of their assets are at their 401k. But when they change jobs, they're going to need an advisor. You want to be there. You want to be ready for them when that money in motion event happens.
Right. We used to get the question a lot, especially when I was on the vendor side on, what's the ROI of social media? And I mean, there's always questions about ROI because those things that you mentioned, like cold calling, direct mail, seminar marketing, they're all very measurable. I think that that's where the comfort level comes. If I make so many phone calls, I'm going to reach so many people. Of those people, I'm going to get so many appointments. Of those appointments, I'm going to get so many, clients. And it was measurable. So there's a comfort level there. Same with direct mail, same with seminar marketing. Much more difficult when it comes to measuring it on social media. Of course, if the person becomes a client and you ask them, well, how did you find out about me? And they say, well, I read, a post that you did on LinkedIn. I've been following you, or I subscribed to your newsletter, and, I finally had an opportunity. That's how you'll get the ROI. But my litmus test was always recognizing that when it comes to social media, that 90 to 95% of the people who are on social media are not only spending a lot of time on it, but they're just voyeuristically taking it in. They may never like your post. They may never comment on your post, but they are paying attention. And the litmus test for me to know that that happens is when you come across a friend, someone you hadn't seen in a while, a colleague, either a coworker or someone that lives in your neighborhood, and they would, with immediate recollection, and say, hey, it looks like you enjoyed your trip to Colorado. Or, hey, you snowboard? I didn't know you snowboard. I thought you skied. And it's like, hang on a second. I haven't talked to this person in a long time, but I did post this on Facebook, or I did post something on Twitter. And so they have this amazing recollection of, coming back to you and making mention of content that you shared, and they never click like, they never click share, or they never made a comment. So just because you're not getting those metrics, and I used to tell people, do not be discouraged if your social media metrics are not what you expect them to be. That doesn't mean people aren't paying attention, and that doesn't mean that you're not making a connection. So it always fascinates me, and I do the same thing when I see people that I haven't talked to in a long time. But I'll say, hey, they just got back from a trip to South America, or that kid just shot the winning shot in his basketball game. You know what I'm saying? So I'm mindful of the fact that I'm paying attention as well, and so I expect that to be the case with clients and prospects.
100%. That is such a great observation of the fact that people will mention to you, that they notice what's going on in your life, even though they haven't commented, you haven't interacted with them. I get that all the time. Mm-hmm. And my mother-in-law is like that, right? She's in her 80s, by the way, and she goes to Facebook, and she's more of a just peruser, as you say, like a lurker, right? She'll see stuff that's going on. Occasionally she'll comment if I share a picture of the kids or something like that.
Sure.
But she'll say, "Oh, Mike, I saw you. How'd that thing with the beer go?" or something like that. And like, "Oh, you obviously saw that I went to some sort of beer event or something, craft beer event." Or she called my wife and she's like, "How's Mike's event going on? I saw it in the news." And she said, "What? Oh, South by Southwest. I saw it in the news. Mike's event is really big." Say, well, it's not my event anyway, but she notices, right? She notices it on Facebook. She doesn't comment on it, but then she creates that recollection. And that's certainly happening for prospects, clients, and referral partners. Really, really cool. So I wonder though, so you're back in the business, you were out of the business on the other side, if you will, as a vendor for a few years. What have been some of the biggest surprises since you've rejoined Tech Girl Financial with an eye to leverage digital to the fullest, right? What have been some of the oh, I didn't see that coming moments, if you will?
I think that the biggest surprise was just how far, the industry has moved. I mean, the financial industry's embrace of digital technology, and maybe it's I'm just lucky because of our broker dealer being so progressive, but the idea that people I can do a podcast, I can create, creative videos, that I can actually create creative images or infographics. That wasn't available to me, when I left the industry. And so I'm really happy to see that it's evolved, to this place. The other thing too was how much the social networks themselves have changed. I mean, you talk about not so much a surprise, but I didn't see it coming. But now, when I think about it, it's almost like hindsight's 2020. Is that because a lot of these social networks are now public companies, they have to deliver on shareholder value. So the organic reach that we were used to having before, which was being able to post something on Facebook and then having a large share of the people who are following you on Facebook actually see the post, how much of that has changed? Where you're not really seeing that. They're not seeing it as much. And so now it's become more of a pay-to-play model, which means that I have to be thinking about social advertising. It means that I have to create much better content and creative content, not just,
So quick question on that. Are you talking about that from the Tech Girl Financial brand page, or are you talking about that for like Kim and your individual page?
Both. But I would say more on the Tech Girl Financial brand. I realized very quickly that, with the following that we have and looking at, and paying attention, and I'm constantly learning about how the industry is changing and how the social networks are changing. I was shocked by the small number of individuals that might actually be seeing your post, even if they're connected to you on your page, which meant that I needed to not only increase the volume, what I mean is by the amount of content that I had to share, but also the distribution, which is finding, distributing on LinkedIn, distributing on Twitter, distributing on Facebook and YouTube, creating content, new content, not borrowing from others or third-party links that everybody else is doing, but something that's unique to us that really illustrates our voice. So looking at creating more video, doing the podcast. And the podcast has actually been really, really good because it's a medium, as you know, that allows you to share a lot of information in a short period of time. But more importantly, the reason we love it so much is because it's respectful of people's time. Most people, I think, who consume podcasts are doing it while they're driving their car, commuting, or perhaps walking the dog. So usually doing something else. But to expect someone to sit down and read, a 3 to 4 page blog post, very unlikely. To expect someone to watch a video that's going to be more than 2 minutes long, very unlikely. And so it's really recognizing what are the patterns of how people are digesting media and then making that adaptation in order for you to do it. So the biggest surprise, I think, is how far we've come along as an industry in the production side and the distribution side. But the audiences have changed too in what they're willing to consume. And so I think it's something we constantly need to keep an eye on and pick up on these patterns.
Those are really good points. I think one quick little, a word of guidance, I guess, for the listeners, for the advisors and the wealth management firm, leadership that might be listening is, that's very much true that branded accounts, there is a bit of a pay to play now on LinkedIn and Facebook, most specifically, because, that's how they're making their money, right? They want you to advertise your content to reach your followers, which is just kind of weird the way that it was set up, right? Me as a consumer, if I've decided to follow Tech Girl Financial, my expectation is I'm going to see updates from Tech Girl Financial in my feed, right? That was, as a consumer, that was my expectation as a user of your product. The fact that they make that harder is a little frustrating, but you get it, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why, that I always recommend, hey, listen, each individual advisor at your firm should be actively using their own personal profile. Number one, it helps them break through a little bit better. But secondly, frankly, your people, your clients, your referral partners, right, your prospects, they have a relationship with the individual much less than they have a relationship with the brand, right? They think of Kim as their financial advisor. They don't think as Tech Girl Financial necessarily as much as the advisor. Because if next week Kim decided to sell Tech Girl Financial to XYZ Financial, they would think Kim's my advisor, right? And they would stay with Kim. It's less about the brand, right? And so for that reason, it's like, well, let's make sure she stands out. She's the trusted advisor. She's in their life. And that's usually what I recommend to people. And with it, when you start thinking about a bigger practice, when you have 10, 15, 20 advisors under one roof, each advisor is going to have their own niche, if you will, right? Their own style. They have their own target client type. Like one might focus on people who went to, as you mentioned, Pac-12 school, or, in my case, I went to Boston University. So I might have a lot of Boston University alums, or I might focus on people in the tech industry, while somebody else might feel more comfortable serving the medical industry at a price. So each advisor really should be focused on building their own following.
Absolutely. And I think it's a combination. We strike a balance between building on the brand and then building on the individual. I mean, we purposely want the individual to have that unique voice. If you work with Kim, it's different than working for me. And there are people who are going to radiate towards one or the other. But the brand build, and wanting to make sure that the brand has a voice as well, it's not lost on us that this is being set up for potential, sell at some point. So we want it to be something that's attractive to someone that we may either recruit as new talent, or down the road when Kim and I decide that we're ready to retire, that we're going to have a very viable business with a built-in audience that we're going to be able to sell. And so it's really important that we build up both.
You mentioned that in our prep call, you talked about recruiting was really, really important. And I think that is the most commonly overlooked value prop of all of this, right? Is that, you want other high quality advisors to come work for Tech Girl Financial, just as I'm sure other listeners of this podcast are looking to grow their business through bringing on other advisors, whether it's a broker dealer or it's a wealth management firm that's looking to grow as well. And this is a really good way of doing it, right? Producing good quality content. They get to know you. You look like really good people to work with and for. You look like the type of firm that is modern and pushing things forward versus somebody who's just gonna, resisting using digital. So that's a really, really great perspective.
Yeah, I wanted to say, that a lot of this has to do with, finding your audiences, finding your tribes. And it goes back a little bit to the conversation we were talking about, the pay to play model of the social networks with the advertising. But one thing I failed to mention on that is that, yeah, even if it becomes a pay to play, at least the pay to play is more targeted to the audiences I'm looking to attract. Because the one thing that these social networks do really well, whether it's LinkedIn or in our case, we've had a lot of success with Facebook advertising, is that you can define, by market area, by job title, by age, when you create an ad. And it's amazing, so that in our case, our focus is working with women in technology. So I can create an advertising platform on Facebook that specifically places in front of them the content or a call to action. And I can target, I want just women in technology who work in Austin, who are between the ages of 35 and 55, who have these titles or work in information technology or software development, the San Francisco Bay Area, Seattle. And so unlike, let's say, advertising in a church bulletin, which is, or you're, let's say, advertising in your local newspaper, that's a, spray and play as opposed to a laser. So I was saying it's the difference between a shotgun and a laser. I want to use lasers. And so that's how we're using our advertising. And the same thing applies to recruitment. We know that our website that our brand is going to attract a specific type of advisor. And so, that's why it's designed that way.
That's really smart. It's funny, just to build on what you said about the old type of advertising. I've had experiences where trying to get wealth management firms to get it on social, they'll have no problem spending $1,100 a month on advertising in this local. It's like a newspaper thing that comes in your mailbox once a month. Have no problem spending $1,100 on an ad that's like a quarter page, mixed in there, that has no tracking mechanism built into it. It's just their standard phone number on it. So no problem spending $1,100 there with no measurable way of knowing if that worked or not. Whereas it's like, if you gave me $1,100 a month to spend on Facebook, can you imagine the results you'd get? Like you said, you can target very specifically down to zip code, age, likely assets for available, right, into household assets, and so forth. This really, really highly targeted stuff. And oh, by the way, you'll only pay when somebody clicks through on that message versus paying just to have the privilege of being in that paper.
Yeah, because the truth is, no one's picking up their phones these days. I mean, when it comes right down to it, I mean, they're spending hours on social media. They're spending hours on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. And so if we're looking to attract, we're looking to attract the next generation of investors or the next generation of advisors, you have to be where they are. And these digital natives are going to connect with those people who are other digital natives. And so it's important for our practice to be able to position these multiple mediums of connection. So it makes it easy for people to feel that they can relate to us, but at the same time that they can communicate, connect with us.
100% agree. And it's really funny too. You mentioned digital natives, but I would also say digital migrants, right? Like my dad, 67 years old, and probably like 8 years or so ago, I can remember him scoffing at social media, like, oh, if I want to talk to you, I'll call you. Right. Mm-hmm. And now he's like a crack addict on Facebook, right? It happens quick. The people who said they will never use Facebook, they'll never text, all that type of stuff. Suddenly you look over at them, and I don't care what demographic your target market is in now, they are using Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not specifically your friend and you. And that's another one that people sometimes struggle with, is like, just because they don't use Facebook aggressively, they think that, okay, well, then none of my target market is going to use Facebook aggressively. It's like, no. You go take a look at how affluent people are that are using Facebook. Your target market is there. I guarantee it.
Oh, I know it is.
With over 2 billion people in the world using it, guess where your target market is.
And I think it's been the fastest growing, demographic on Facebook and some of these social networks has been the baby boomer plus. So I love that term, the digital migrants, because you mentioned your dad. My dad is approaching 80. He'll be 80 this year, and he has a Twitter account, and he uses it, and he posts quotes. He posts inspirational stories because he worked, for IBM for 30, 35 years or so. And he has all this wealth of experience. And I just love the fact that he uses this medium, and he's connecting with his grandchildren through Twitter. And so believe me, if you don't think this generation will migrate towards these, digital platforms or social platforms, they will, and they'll make that connection.
Right. And it's certainly true that their heirs are absolutely there too. So if you hope to have a connection with the next generation, especially the heirs of your clients, you might want to be there, because they are actively on social, and they're actively listening to podcasts and watching videos and so forth. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that your broker dealer was really supportive and open to allowing this type of thing. What are some of the things that you attribute? What are the things that they do to make your life a lot easier in producing and distributing content and so forth, that you would have kind of, I don't want to say recommend or advise might be too strong, but that you would tell advisors to be on the lookout for and to help them grow their business using digital?
I think in every relationship, having a strong communication is key. And that's really what's allowed us to do what we're doing. As I mentioned before, we're lucky to work with a very progressive broker dealer that is willing to work with us to try new approaches. So experimentation is not necessarily discouraged, it's encouraged, but by having those conversations about what you can do and when you can't do. And, it's not lost on me, and I think a lot of advisors, we've almost conditioned to think about the compliance department as the department of no.
Right.
But what I've learned is it depends on how you ask the question of your compliance department. So that if you approach them, and in most traditional compliance departments, if you say, "Can I do X, Y, Z?" the answer almost is always going to be no. But if you come to them instead and you approach it more from a conversational, "How can I do X, Y, Z?" now you're opening that channel of communication for them to outline to you how you can make these things happen. And so what I love about working with our compliance department, and I can't believe I use the word love and compliance in the same sentence, but occasionally we'll submit a piece of content for approval and it gets back with a revisions required message. But what I like is it comes back with more than just that the revision is required, but they'll actually give a specific guidance on what it would take for them to approve it. And sometimes it's something as simplistic as you just need to add a disclosure, or I need a citation. I need to know what the source material was for this. And so not only will they assign a specific compliance officer to provide that feedback, but they're okay with us picking up the phone, giving them a call and having a conversation. And the thing gets turned around, within a day or two. And so I think it's communication. It's working with your compliance department and saying, look, I want to do this. How can I do it in a compliant fashion? And I have found that most compliance officers will welcome that conversation because they know it matters that you want to do it right, but they're not going to stop you from doing it, if it's done right. So like all good relationships, I think it starts with good communication.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I love that. And one of our prior guests, Ivan Barreto, he will love to hear this. Can be music to his ears. I'm sure he's listening. He'll be listening to this episode of the podcast and like, yes. So kind of to wrap it up here, I like to bring it full circle and connect it to the mission of Truelytics, right? Truelytics is a business intelligence platform, but the overall goal is to help advisors and wealth management firms and by extension broker dealers increase the value of their business by providing them with better insights. Mm-hmm. How do you see digital helping firms in the long run increase the value of their business? What are your thoughts there?
I think the best thing they do is they create audiences, or the tribes that you like to work with if you focus on a specific niche market as we do. So what we have seen is by having this niche market, which is women in technology, it's sitting down and identifying, okay, what's going to matter to these audiences? What kind of groups and associations are they part of? What are the conversations that are taking place in their space that we can be part of and find a bridge towards financial services? And so what I really like is, once you create this audience, is you're feeding it the content, especially if it's creative content via podcasting, via creative video, or finding, as a curator, social media posts or third-party content that's going to resonate with this audience. And I think it's a very inexpensive way to showcase, who you are, what you stand for, and how you're going to add value. And so, the more you do this, as we had mentioned before, you're creating a very strong foundation by which people understand exactly the value that you can add, so that when they come across that Money in Motion event, when they think that, I might need the help of someone in this space who has been providing consistently good information, obviously geared towards our industry, without anything asking in return other than maybe my email address or the fact that I became a fan of them on Facebook or I'm connected to them on LinkedIn. That's what we're positioning. This is why it's so important to have that strong digital or social foundation. So it makes it easy for those people that are part of the audience that you're building to seek you out when the time comes and for you to be ready for them. And so that's really what we've done.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that owning and acquiring access to an audience is where you went with the answer to that question, because it's so true, right? I mean, in the end, the value of any financial business, it's the book of business, right? It's the clients, and it's your access to a list of prospects as well, and that is an audience by definition. And so the more vibrant that audience is, and the more access you have to that audience, the more valuable your business is in the long run. So if you're looking to sell that business someday, if I look at you and you go, wow, you've got an email list of 50,000 people that you've acquired over the last 10 years, and they're all in this very targeted niche. And oh, by the way, your clients are all in that targeted niche, and you've been producing and distributing content to that niche via these channels. Awesome. That's a really valuable thing for me to acquire as a potential M&A partner versus, hey, how do you find clients? We just have a seminar once in a while.
Yeah. Well, it's not lost on me that for me to fully evaluate, what TechGirl Financial is worth, especially for someone who's interested in it, is not just selling them what's in the bucket. It's not just the client list. It's the entire funnel that's feeding it. It's the entire ecosystem that we've developed. That's where the real value is.
That is awesome. So as we close out here, I'm sure people are going to want to follow up with you and kind of maybe pick your brain on some things. I'm sure, other advisors, you mentioned you were looking to recruit other advisors to the firm, maybe like, hey, TechGirl Financial sounds like the place for me. What's the best way for people to find you?
Probably the best way is to visit our website, which is techgirlfinancial.com. And then once you're there, go ahead and click the contact button. All those go directly to me, and I'd be more than happy to reach out. Alternatively, if you're on Twitter, I'm pretty active. You can direct message me using @VictorGaxiola. That's my handle.
Perfect, sir. Well, thank you very much once again, Victor. All my best to Kim as well. Maybe I'll have to get her on the podcast at some point.
But we'll have to get back to Austin.
Exactly. You should come to Austin. It's a great place to visit and hang out. Now's the time to do it before the heat really comes. All right, sir. Well, thank you once again. You have a great day.
Thank you, Mike. Take care.
All right. Huge thanks again to Victor Gaxiola of TechGirl Financial for joining us on the show. I particularly appreciated of him kind of reminding us all about the importance of your audience, to the valuation of your business. And if you know me and you follow me for a while, you see me beat this drum all the time. It's all about audience. It's never been a better time in human history for the accumulation and the nurturing of a very targeted audience for your business, right? In those categories of clients, prospects, referral partners, current employees and team members, and future employees and team members that you may want to recruit to your business. So whether those are advisors or other members of the team, social media, email, YouTube, podcasting, they're all fantastic ways to reach those people. And if you work on encouraging those people to become subscribers and followers, you end up having an owned access to those people. And you don't have to pay a lot of money on advertising or spend a lot of time and energy trying to put together events to reach prospects. You don't have to spend a lot of time on cold calling, right? You end up having this curated, targeted list of people who are actually excited to hear from you. They've subscribed, they've followed, they're looking forward to hearing from you. And that is tremendously valuable to your business now and in the future. So I highly encourage, if you're not doing that, I highly encourage you to get started on accumulating an email list, building your social media following, whether it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Start a podcast, get started with video. If you need a little help, a little encouragement on how to do that, feel free to reach out to us, valuations@truelytics.com. I'm happy to chat with you about that. You can always follow me. I'm at Mike Langford pretty much on every social media platform, so I'm happy to chat with you about that. And of course, you can follow the Truelytics ourselves on all the socials at Truelytics over on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you have any questions, you have topics you want to see us on the show, as always, feel free to reach out to us on all of those platforms. Please do give us a like and subscribe on the various socials and your preferred podcasting platform, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or TuneIn. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon. See ya. Bye.